How you doing? I am Mr. Marlin. I'm going to do you a pre-trip inspection on this truck and trailer of the whole vehicle. Alright guys, this is the next section of the test. We're going to start from here, right here at this marker light, okay? This marker light is amber in color. We want to make sure all the nuts and bolts are present and tight. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Now it has three functions. It has a running light, a turn signal, and a four-way flasher. All right. Now we're going to come with this driver's side mirror. You will do the same as you do on the passenger side. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. It's properly mounted and secured. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Come around to your glass. Make sure your glass is clean and clear and free of debris. Now open your driver door all the way open. Make sure it closes. All right. Check your hinges up in here. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted, secured. Nothing seems cracked, bent, or broken. Check your weather stripping on the inside and on the outside. For any abrasions, bubble cuts, and drop, make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Here we have our batteries. Okay. This is our batteries. We have 4 batteries right here. All right. Make sure all nuts and bolts are present and tight. Everything is properly mounted and secured. No corrosion, no tape, no carpet showing that indicates anything wrong. All right, you don't want no arc in your batteries. Here, we're gonna make sure your top and your lower level on your steps, make sure it's free and clean of debris. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken, properly mounted and secured. Here we have our gas tank. You want to check your gas cap, your gas tank straps, and your gas tank itself. We're going to take this off. On the inside, make sure the rubber seal don't have any abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot, and it's properly mounted and secured. Here you have your safety chain locked in with you. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. Check your fuel tank itself for any holes in your fuel tank on the top and the bottom of the fuel tank. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Make sure you don't have any illegal welds as well. Here's your fuel straps. Make sure your fuel straps with your rubber garments don't have any abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rotting. Make sure it's in line, and check your nuts and bolts. Make sure they're present and tight, properly mounted and secured. Now we're going to come around to the back of the vehicle. On the back of the vehicle, at the very top, you have your DOT reflective tape. Make sure it's clean and clear and properly mounted and secured. Come down, here you have your utility lights. Your utility lights are clear in color. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. Now you're gonna come down right here. This is your airbag. This is your airbag. Make sure your airbag don't have any abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. Here's your shocks. Make sure your shocks are not leaking. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. Here you have your frame and your cross members right here. Make sure your frame and your cross members are properly mounted and secured. No illegal welds, not cracked, bent, or broken. And make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Here's your exhaust. Make sure your exhaust is properly mounted and secured. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Check for any signs of soot trails that indicates any leakage in your exhaust system. Right here is your 3-piece drive shaft. You have one in the front, this one, and the other one is in the back, connecting to 2 tandem axles. The 2 drive axles. Make sure it's properly mounted, secured. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Make sure all your U-bolts and U-joints, all nuts and bolts are present and tight. Now you have to have your power divider connected to your differential. Rear end. Make sure it's properly mounted, secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Here is your torque arm, or torque bar. It's properly mounted, secured. You got all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. You have your control arm. Your control arm right here, which is also your spring, is mounted onto your differential with U-bolts. Make sure your U-bolts are present and tight. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Properly mounted and secured. It has your control arm hanger. It's properly mounted, secured to your frame. Make sure all nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Here you have right here, you have your dual brake chamber. This is your dual brake chamber. It has hoses coming to and from. Make sure on your hoses have no abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. It's locked onto the S-cam bracket On the other side of this, you have your push rod and your slack adjuster. Here's your slack adjuster. Your push rod is coming out to do a brake chamber. No more than 1 inch of play with the brakes release. All right? Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. On the inside, if we can get in here real quick, we have your drum, your brake pads, and your brake drum. On your brake pads and your brake drum, make sure it's properly mounted secure. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken, and it has no illegal welds. On your brake drum, make sure it's free of clean and clear, free of any debris. On your brake pads, no less than 1/4 inch of thickness left on your brake pads. You're going to check the inside of your rim, the outside of your rim. Make sure it has no illegal welds and nothing is cracked, bent, or broken, properly mounted and secured. Here's called your bud rims. Make sure your bud rims on your drive tires have 0 space, no gap. All right. Make sure in between the tires itself, no less than 3 inches of space. Anything less than that indicates a flat tire or low tire pressure. Make sure it's properly mounted secured. Here you want to make sure the inside and the top of both tires, dual tires, have evenly worn across the top. No abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot on the side. Make sure it's at least aired up to at least 100 PSI or factory or your company specs. No less than 2/32 on each groove, a tire depth left on each tire. These can be recrapped or regrooved tires. Make sure it's properly seated and beaded to the rim, properly mounted and secured. Right here is your, this is your axle seal. This is your hub axle. Make sure it's properly mounted and secured. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. This right here, your lug nuts. Make sure all your lug nuts is present and tight. Make sure you don't see any shiny metal or rust or water that indicates looseness. Properly mounted and secured. Here's your valve stem. Make sure your valve stem on both rims, one on the inside and one right here. Make sure it's not cracked with the broken, properly mounted and secured, and it's not leaking. We're gonna come across here, come to the back right here. This is your airbag. Make sure your airbag on your frame, make sure it's not leaking. No abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot. Make sure it's properly mounted, secured. Here's your nuts and bolts. Make sure they're present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Here, right here behind your drive tires, this is your shock. Make sure your upper mount and your lower mount on your shock, all nuts and bolts are present and tight, properly mounted and secured. Make sure your shock is not leaking. Then you come around here to the back. You would say you examine the tag drive as you just showing yourself on your front drive, okay? This is your tag-along drive. So on your tag-along drive or the number 3 axle, whichever one you prefer to say. I like to say this is my number 3 axle. Since we got the truck and trailer, it has 5 axles. So this is my number 3 axle. And I examine my number 3 axle as I just shown you on my number 2 axle. We're gonna move to the back right here. This is our mud flap hanger. On our mud flap hanger, make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken, properly mounted and secured. This right here, make sure you have 100% DOT tape on the back of your mud flap. On your mud flap itself, make sure you don't have any abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot. Properly mounted and secured. No lower, no less than 2 to 8 inches from the ground. Here, you want to make sure you have your 2 reflectors. Make sure your reflectors are present and tight. Make sure they're clean and clear, properly mounted and secured. You have your tail lights. You have 2 of them, the left side and the right side. You want to make sure they're red in color. Make sure they're properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Right here, you have your reverse light. It's clear in color. No abrasions, bubble cuts, and dry rot. Properly mounted, secured. Nothing is cracked, bent, or broken. Here's your license plate or tag light. Make sure all your nuts and bolts are present and tight. It's clean and clear, not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's properly mounted and secured. And that would include this section of the inspection. Thank you. Oh, how you guys doing? I'm Mr. Marlin. I want you guys to follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm gonna help you guys